She told me I'd never be management material. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I just sat there staring at the woman who had built her entire career on the systems I created, the fires I extinguished, the weekends I surrendered. Marissa thought she'd put me in my place that morning, denying my promotion with a bored smile and a folder she barely skimmed. But while she believed she'd won, she had no idea she'd just removed the one thing holding her entire department together. And when that piece disappears, everything else starts to fall. If you've ever been underestimated at work, subscribe and tell me your story. I could tell from the moment I stepped into Marissa Drake's office that the decision had already been made. Her desk was spotless, her body angled just so, her expression smooth in that managerial way that let you know she'd practiced this conversation in the mirror. My promotion file, a thick packet I'd spent weeks preparing, sat closed, untouched, resting politely at the far edge of her desk as if it offended her. She folded her hands, exhaled, and gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Lila, I've reviewed everything carefully," she began, though we both knew she hadn't. "And while your work has been acceptable, I don't believe you're ready for a leadership role yet." Acceptable. The word landed like a slap, soft enough to deny malice, sharp enough to draw blood. I'd spent 5 years rebuilding the backbone of Stonebridge Dynamics from chaos. I'd held collapsing plants together during system outages, rebuilt inventory processes, created the documentation Marissa depended on every single morning. I'd missed holidays, birthdays, weekends. My daughter Ivy once asked if the office was my real home, and still acceptable. I kept my voice even. I'd learned long ago that showing emotion in front of people like Marissa only fueled their sense of superiority. "I see," I said, though what I saw was her insecurity, her fear, the way she clung to credit that was never hers. "What would you advise I work on for next year?" Marissa lifted her eyes as if the question annoyed her. "Visibility," she said, tapping a manicured nail against the table. "You're good at fixing things quietly, but leadership requires presence, confidence, a certain polish. Perhaps in another year or two, you'll be ready." The irony was almost funny. Everything she did, every presentation, every plan, was built on the infrastructure I created, the analysis I wrote, the data I organized. But presence mattered more, apparently. She checked her watch, already done with me. "Anyway, the Harper Industrial file needs adjustments today. They want revised projections by close of business." My promotion, denied in under 3 minutes, was already forgotten. I gathered my folder. She didn't even glance at it. On my way out, I passed the corner office she'd remodeled for herself last quarter, complete with new glass partitions and a fancy coffee maker she didn't know how to use. I paused just long enough to imagine my name on that door, not because I craved status, but because I earned it. In the elevator, my reflection stared back at me. I looked calm, too calm. I thought I should be angry. I wasn't. What I felt instead was something colder, sharper, a clarity that slid into place like a blade finding a seam. I stepped into the parking lot, breathing air that felt different somehow. Marissa believed she'd put me in my place. What she didn't understand was that without me, that place, her place, was built on sand, and the tide was already coming in. When I first joined Stonebridge Dynamics, I walked into a storm no one warned me about. The operations floor looked like a graveyard of abandoned spreadsheets, half-finished workflows, contradictory procedures, and machines that seemed to break down hourly simply because no one remembered how to maintain them. The previous systems manager had quit without notice after clashing with upper leadership, taking every bit of procedural knowledge with him like a departing king dragging his entire kingdom's history into exile. There were no documents, no guidelines, no explanations, just a tower of frantic emails and a team so overwhelmed they'd stopped pretending the place could be saved. I remember that first week vividly. People looked at me with a mixture of hope and pity, as if I'd signed up for a war no one could win. Every morning at 7, I walked in, rolled up my sleeves, and started piecing together what everyone else had given up on. I deciphered mislabeled data, hunted down missing inventory trails, reconstructed client profiles from scraps buried in old archives. Some nights I stayed until midnight sorting through digital rubble that had accumulated for years. When I realized the company had no centralized documentation, I built one myself, slowly, meticulously, obsessively. I created process guides so clear even a half-trained intern could follow them. I rewrote entire workflows, color-coded each step, streamlined communications between plant managers and analysts, and identified fail points that had cost the company millions without anyone realizing where the leaks were coming from. People noticed, but not loudly. They'd pass by my desk and leave sticky notes saying things like, "Thanks for the save," or "Don't know how you figured this out, but amazing." Small acknowledgments from people who actually understood the work because they were drowning in it too. Leadership, on the other hand, reacted differently. To them, I was convenient, a problem solver who didn't demand attention, credit, or applause. Marissa especially adored the fact that I worked behind the curtain. She would stop by my desk with her coffee cup and say, "You always know how to fix these things, Lila. You're such a natural." A natural. As if I'd been born knowing how to reverse engineer broken systems and resurrect dying departments. What she meant, what she depended on, was that I made her look good without challenging her authority. When our biggest client, Harper Industrial, threatened to pull their contract 2 years ago, it was my redesign of their reporting process that saved the deal. Marissa presented the solution as her own, but afterward, when she returned to the office and found me still at my desk at 8 p.m., she patted my shoulder and said, "We're a great team." She meant I was her safety net, the quiet scaffolding holding everything upright. Over time, people came to rely on me so instinctively that half the company no longer knew how their own processes worked. I didn't intend to become indispensable. I just wanted things to run smoothly. I wanted people to succeed. I wanted clients to stay. But somewhere along the way, my competence turned into a cage. The more efficient I became, the more invisible I became. It was comfortable for them, dangerously comfortable, to forget who built the backbone they leaned on every single day. That's why, sitting in Marissa's office hearing her call my work acceptable, something inside me twisted. Not from hurt, from recognition. They had mistaken my silence for smallness, my humility for obedience, my dedication for lack of ambition. And when people make that mistake long enough, they forget the simplest truth. The person who holds the blueprint holds the power. The morning after Marissa dismissed my promotion, I woke up before my alarm, but I didn't rush out of bed the way I always did. For 5 years, my body had been trained to leap up at the first sound, knowing that if I didn't get ahead of the day would drown me. But that morning, I lay there staring at the ceiling, realizing something no one at Stonebridge Dynamics had ever considered. I didn't owe them my life. I still arrived at work, but not at 7:15 like usual. I walked through the doors at 9 a.m. on the dot, the time written clearly in my contract but never once honored by me. People noticed immediately. Tom from Data Analytics blinked at the clock, then at me, as if I were a ghost. "Everything okay?" he asked cautiously. "Perfectly fine," I said, setting my bag down. "Just following my scheduled hours." He hesitated, waiting for the Lila he knew, the one who absorbed everyone's panic before it spread, to offer help, guidance, a solution to a problem he hadn't even told me about yet. I turned on my monitor and opened my email. Instead of sorting, prioritizing, and clearing 3 departments' worth of messages, I only answered those addressed directly to me. The rest? I left where they belonged, other people's responsibility. By 10:30, the ripple effects had already begun. A supplier mix-up that I typically corrected before breakfast spiraled into frantic calls between procurement and inventory. I sipped my coffee. A mislabeled batch of production data, which I usually caught and fixed before management even knew it existed, made its way into a client report. I kept my eyes on my spreadsheet. Tom rushed over, breathless. "Hey, did you see the email about the North Plant? The numbers aren't reconciling." "Then they should talk to North Plant," I replied. He stared at me, confused. "But you always... you know how to fix that." "It's not in my job description," I said evenly, letting the words settle. "I'm trying to respect the company's structure. That's what leadership wants, right?" The color drained from his face when he realized I wasn't joking. Around noon, people started hovering near my desk, the way you hover near a smoke detector that suddenly stops beeping. Something felt wrong, but they couldn't explain it. By mid-afternoon, a chain reaction of small failures had begun weaving itself into something bigger. The backlog of unresolved issues, which I usually erased before anyone saw, piled up so quickly that even upper management noticed. Marissa emerged from her office, heels snapping like warning shots. "Lila, did you send the revised inventory projections for Harper yet?" "No," I replied, not looking up. "They weren't sent to me." She blanched. "They always go to you." "They shouldn't," I said calmly. "That's forecasting's responsibility." She opened her mouth but couldn't seem to form words. It was the first time I'd ever seen her lose her script. That evening, I shut down my computer at exactly 5 p.m. Not 5:12, not 6:03, not 9:47, exactly 5. When I got home, Ivy was on the couch doing homework. She looked up, surprised. "You're home early." "I'm home on time," I corrected gently. She grinned. "Can we cook dinner together?" So we did. I let her measure the spices, even though she always overestimates garlic. My phone buzzed on the counter with notification after notification. Emails, missed calls, messages flagged urgent in all caps. I turned the phone face down. By the time I put Ivy to bed, the message counter had climbed past 40. I didn't check any of them. The next morning, when I walked into the office at 9 a.m. again, the atmosphere felt thick, like a storm had rolled through but hadn't yet cleared. People whispered. Meetings ran over. Department heads darted back and forth with stacks of papers they didn't know how to interpret. For the first time in years, the cracks showed in daylight. I took my seat, logged in, and waited. Not out of malice, not for revenge. I simply wanted them to experience the world they'd built, the world that only held together because I'd held it, and the world without me was already beginning to wobble. By the second morning of my quiet rebellion, Stonebridge Dynamics was already a different place. Not improved, not strengthened, just suddenly honest. Problems that had always existed but stayed hidden under. My constant maintenance finally surfaced, and no one had the knowledge or patience to manage them. The first real wave hit at 9:40 a.m. when Harper Industrial, the company's most demanding client, requested urgent changes to their production mapping. Changes only I knew how to implement. Normally, I would have prepped Marissa with a full breakdown, anticipated the bottlenecks, and drafted the email she'd pretend to write. But today, I simply sat at my desk, answering a separate question about cycle time analysis. 10 minutes later, Marissa emerged from her office, looking like someone had whispered disaster in her ear. "Lila," she said tightly, "Harper is asking for the updated mapping. Where did you keep the process guides for the new configuration?" "Shared drive," I replied, "under Process Matrix, folder C2. She left in a hurry, only to return 15 minutes later looking more rattled. "There are 12 files in that folder. Which one is the correct one?" "The one titled Mapping Revision 3, I said. "The rest are archived versions." She stared at the screen like it was written in ancient code. "Can you do the update yourself? They want it within the hour." "I can," I said, keeping my expression neutral. "But I have the compliance audit report due today. It's a regulatory deadline." Her jaw tightened. "So you're refusing to help?" "I'm meeting my assigned responsibilities," I answered. "If you want me to shift priorities, I need that direction in writing." She backed away, mumbling something I couldn't hear, before disappearing into her office again. I resumed my work as if nothing were happening, even though I could feel the tension in the air like static. When lunchtime came, I walked out. Not at my desk, not with my phone in hand, actually out. I got a sandwich across the street, sat on a bench, and enjoyed the rare feeling of sunlight on my skin in the middle of a weekday. I didn't check my phone. I didn't think about Harper, or the compliance report, or the half-dozen fires that were likely smoldering back at the office. I thought about Ivy, about the way she laughed when she corrected my pronunciation of the characters in her favorite book, and how I'd missed too many evenings like that. By the time I returned to the office, the storm was fully visible. People rushed past me. Someone muttered something about corrupted output files. Someone else whispered about Harper threatening to escalate to leadership. At my desk sat a stack of printed notes, no doubt from people hoping I'd swoop in and just fix it the way I always had. I placed them neatly in the inbox tray I rarely used. Then I did what no one expected. I turned off work notifications on my phone, clocked out at 5 p.m. sharp, and drove straight home without a shred of guilt. Ivy was sprawled on the living room floor, drawing pictures of animals wearing tiny hats. She brightened when I walked in. "You're home early again." "On time," I corrected with a smile. We spent the evening making popcorn and watching a movie she'd been begging me to see. Halfway through, my phone vibrated repeatedly. I flipped it over. 86 missed calls. Messages marked critical. Emails flagged in red. I muted the device entirely. Stonebridge Dynamics had finally met the version of itself that existed without me holding every loose piece together. And the truth was, it wasn't surviving. It was cracking, splintering, collapsing, and morning would bring the breaking point. I walked into the office the next morning, knowing exactly what I'd find: pressure, panic, and people trying to maintain the illusion of control. Sure enough, the minute I stepped inside, Tom rushed over, eyes wide with that exhausted desperation I'd spent years rescuing him from. "Lila, thank God you're here. Harper is threatening to pull their entire contract. Nobody can figure out how to deliver the mapping updates. And the compliance audit is past due. Leadership is freaking out." I nodded once, calm as still water. "Who's managing the response?" He swallowed. "They want you in the conference room, now." Of course they did. The same people who insisted I wasn't leadership material suddenly couldn't breathe without me. I walked into the room and saw Marissa, pale and rigid, sitting beside Grant Huxley, the division VP. Papers were scattered across the table. A digital clock on the wall blinked angrily with missed deadlines. Grant exhaled the moment he saw me, relief flooding his face. "Lila, thank you for coming. We're in a difficult spot. Harper is threatening breach. The audit is overdue. None of the teams can locate the correct version of your documentation." "Because," I said evenly, "I'm the only one who understands the system end to end, and that's not by accident." The silence sharpened. Grant leaned forward. "We need your help. What will it take for you to fix this?" Marissa flinched as if she already knew the answer and hated it. I placed a folder on the table, the same way I'd done when she dismissed my promotion days earlier, except this wasn't a performance file, it was my resignation. "You're leaving?" Grant asked, stunned. "When?" "2 weeks from today," I said calmly. "But I've been approached by another company. They're offering me a senior leadership position, full authority over systems design." Marissa's eyes darted toward me, small and tight. "Lila, be reasonable. You can't leave now. We need you." I turned to her. "You needed me last week too, but you said I wasn't ready for leadership." Her cheeks burned red. Grant rubbed his forehead. "What would convince you to stay? Name it." I let the power of the moment sit. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one scrambling. I wasn't the one carrying blame or shielding egos. I was the one with leverage. "Respect," I said, "recognition, proper authority, and the freedom to rebuild the operational infrastructure the right way." Grant nodded quickly. "Done. I'll create a new position. Director of Operational Intelligence. You'll report directly to me." I studied him, making sure he understood this wasn't desperation on my part. "I'll think about it," I said. Marissa looked as if she might break. Grant gestured toward the mountain of documents in front of him. "In the meantime, could you stabilize the Harper situation?" I stood, gathering the papers I'd need. "I'll fix today's crisis," I said. "But what happens next depends on what this company decides I'm worth." And for the first time in a long while, the room understood that my value was no longer theirs to define. Grant didn't wait long after the meeting to call me into his office. I barely had time to finish drafting the recovery plan for Harper before his assistant appeared at my desk, breathless. "He wants to see you, now." His tone wasn't the clipped urgency of someone issuing orders. It was the urgency of someone afraid of losing something irreplaceable. I followed her to the corner office overlooking the loading docks, a view he often bragged about because it made him feel connected to the heartbeat of the company. Today, he didn't even glance at it. "Close the door, Lila," he said quietly. I did. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." His voice held a note I'd never heard before, respect mixed with caution. "First," he said, leaning forward, "I owe you an apology. I should have been paying closer attention. I knew you were good, but I didn't realize just how much of this place you were holding together." I didn't bother softening the truth. Most people don't realize something's essential until it's gone. He winced but nodded. "You're right. Still, I need to know, are you seriously considering that other offer?" "I am." He swallowed. "Let me ask you something directly. What would make you stay?" This time, I didn't answer immediately. I'd rushed decisions my entire career, taking on projects without recognition, patching holes others ignored, saying yes before I thought through the cost. Not today. "Authority," I finally said, "not a title without weight. Real decision-making authority." "Granted," he said instantly. "You'll have it." "A team of my choosing," I continued. 3 people minimum, skilled, overlooked, and capable of actual innovation. "Done." "And," I added, letting the word hang in the air, "Marissa stays." That threw him. He leaned back, eyebrows raised. "After how she treated you, why?" "Because," I said, choosing each word carefully, "this isn't about punishing her. Firing her would look vindictive, and I won't start leadership with the appearance of revenge. Besides, removing one person won't fix the system that allowed this dysfunction to exist." He studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "That's politically smart." "It's necessary," I corrected. "She'll report operations matters through my office from now on, but her title can remain unchanged." "Agreed." He opened a drawer and pulled out a draft offer letter. "This is the formal version of what we discussed in the conference room. I'll update it with the authority structure you requested." I skimmed the pages. The salary alone made my brow lift. They were prepared to pay more than double my current rate. My hands didn't shake, but the reality of it settled into me, heavy and warm. They were finally seeing what I'd been worth all along. "Take the weekend to think," Grant said. "But I'll be honest, we need you, and I don't want to lose you." "I know," I said softly, not with arrogance but with clarity. When I left his office, Marissa was waiting by the hallway, eyes red from sleeplessness or panic or both. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it again, unsure of what she was allowed to say to me now. For once, she understood the shift. The ground beneath us had changed, and the next move belonged entirely to me. I walked into the office early Monday morning, earlier than I had in weeks. The sky was barely lifting from gray to blue, the building still quiet enough that footsteps echoed in the hallway. I didn't come in early out of obligation this time. I came because I wanted clarity before the day unfolded. I headed straight to Grant's office, the offer letter tucked neatly in my bag. His assistant hadn't arrived yet, but his door was open, and he glanced up from his laptop when I knocked. "You're early," he said. "I wanted to give you my answer before things get busy," I replied, taking the seat across from him. Even then, I let the silence stretch just long enough for the balance of power to register. "I'm accepting your offer," I said finally, "under the conditions we discussed." He didn't hide his relief. "Good. I'll finalize everything today." "There's one more thing," I added. "I want full autonomy in structuring how our workflows intersect with the plants. If I'm going to rebuild operational intelligence, I need freedom to make decisions without waiting for approvals that will slow us down." "You have it," he said without hesitation. And just like that, the decision that had taken 5 years to earn was agreed to in less than 5 seconds. By 10 a.m., a company-wide announcement went out. I was now Director of Operational Intelligence, a role that hadn't existed until the chaos revealed just how badly they needed one. The email was simple, professional, but the subject line made my stomach flip. Leadership announcement, Lila Monroe. Suddenly, people who used to overlook me were stopping by my desk with congratulations. Tom looked both proud and awkward, like he wasn't sure whether to hug me or salute. "So you're my boss now?" he asked with a crooked smile. "Technically, yes," I answered, "but don't worry, I won't make you wear a suit." Laughter eased the tension, but beneath it was something else. Respect. Real, earned, unmistakable respect. The kind that couldn't be faked or given out of pity. Around 2 in the afternoon, Marissa showed up at my door clutching a folder. "Quarterly strategy report," she said, her voice controlled but tight. "Since operational planning falls under you now, you'll present it at tomorrow's meeting." I took the folder. "Thank you." She lingered, and for a moment, the polished confidence she always wore slipped. I want to say she hesitated, searching for the right angle. "I didn't recommend against your promotion because I thought you were incapable." "No, I did it because I couldn't afford to lose you from my team," she said quietly. "You were the one person I could always count on." "That," I replied, not unkindly, "is the problem." Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. "I see that now." She turned to leave, but I stopped her gently. "Marissa." She looked back. "This doesn't have to be a battle," I said, "but the way things were can't continue. If we're going to make this work, you'll have to respect the boundaries you ignored before." She nodded once, reluctantly but honestly. For her, that was growth. Small, late growth, but growth nonetheless. Over the next 3 months, everything changed. I built a team of brilliant employees who had been hidden in roles far beneath their talent. A sharp, detail-obsessed analyst from plant operations, a process designer stuck in administrative work, and a soft-spoken data tech who saw patterns others overlooked. Together, we streamlined operations across departments, cut turnaround times, eliminated bottlenecks, and restored client confidence. Harper Industrial not only renewed their contract, they expanded it. And every time they sent feedback, one line always repeated, "We want Lila's team on all future developments." One Friday evening, as I packed up to leave, an email notification appeared on my screen. "Board approval. Promotion to Vice President, Operational Systems, effective next month." At the bottom of the message was a note from Grant. "Unanimous vote, including Marissa's recommendation." I leaned back in my chair, letting the moment settle. This wasn't the triumph of winning over anyone. It wasn't revenge or vindication. It was something quieter, steadier, more powerful. I had finally stepped into the role I'd been filling long before anyone acknowledged it. As I drove home to Ivy, who was probably sprawled on the living room rug drawing foxes in tiny hats, I realized something. This time, I wasn't coming home early or on time. I was coming home whole. When I look back on everything that happened, what stays with me isn't the chaos, the power plays, or even the promotion. It's the moment I realized I had been shrinking myself for a system perfectly willing to let me disappear. The truth is, most of us don't get burned out because we're weak. We burn out because we keep giving in places that only know how to take. My story isn't about grand revenge or crushing an enemy. It's about drawing a line so clearly that the people who once ignored you are forced to confront the truth. You were the backbone they never saw. And here's something I learned along the way. Sometimes forgiveness is self-liberation, but sometimes silence is the sharpest knife. When I stopped absorbing everyone's mess, the consequences revealed themselves without me lifting a finger. That wasn't cruelty, it was clarity. In real life, you may not be able to walk out tomorrow or overhaul your entire company, but you can begin reclaiming your worth in small, steady ways. You can say no without apologizing. You can stop fixing problems that aren't yours. You can build boundaries that protect your energy instead of draining it. And you can remind yourself every single day that competence isn't the same as servitude. Today I live with more calm, more confidence, and more freedom. Not because someone finally valued me, but because I finally valued myself. How to get started today. Write down 3 tasks you'll no longer take responsibility for unless they're truly yours. Set a firm start and stop time for your day. And honor it. Practice one boundary in the next 24 hours, even if it's small. If you've ever felt invisible at work, tell me your experience in the comments. Share this story with someone who needs it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories just like this.